Welcome to the Fashion Translator. I'm Claire, your host. Together we explore how AI and innovation are reshaping the fashion industry through creativity, technology, and global partnership. For today's episode, I'm thrilled to welcome Emily Petroff, founder and CEO of Switch Society, a membership-based clothing swap movement. Emily, thank you for joining me today. Could you start by introducing yourself and walking us through the journey that led you to found Switch Society?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me, Claire. I really am excited to be here. And I think the conversations that you're having are really important. So I feel honored to expand on our part of what that looks like and how that works. So it's been a wild ride. If someone had told me 3 years ago that this is where we would be now, or where I specifically would be, I would not have believed them. It has just been, there's been so many interesting things that have come up. So I didn't set out to build this business. I didn't set out to start a movement. I feel like it was divine intervention in some ways, or divine guidance. I love women. I'm a community curator. I love building community. Where I live, there's a lot of snow. It's cold in the winter. I don't love winter, but because I love getting together with women and I like wine and just kind of that community that comes from supporting each other through whatever it is that whatever path we're on. I had too many things in my closet. I don't know if a lot of people don't know this, but 80% of the American closet hasn't been worn in the last year. And so I fell into that category for sure. And so I decided to host a clothing exchange, and I had never done one before. And so I started to look at what was being done globally. How were people hosting them, and what types of things were they doing? And through that process, I started to learn how bad textile waste is for the planet. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know about all of the things that were happening. And I'm pretty loud and obnoxious. And so I started to use my voice to help other people understand what was going on. And I felt like even if they were making the same decisions that they were making before, at least they were making it from a conscious place instead of an unconscious place,
Yeah.
which is really important to me. And so I put an event on Facebook, and within about 10 to 12 days, there was so much interest that even if a small amount of the people came, we were going to have to host it. And I could never host it at my house. And I had opened it up to a larger audience than just my friends and people that I knew, because I am a plus size person and not all of my friends are my same body shape and size. And so I wanted it to be very inclusive and open to a lot of different, just women, no matter where they were on their journey with their body. So we ended up renting meeting space at the Hilton. And it ended up being the weekend in January of 2023 where it was 30 below zero. And so a lot of the women who said they were going to come, didn't participate. We still had about 20 women come, and we collected over 817 items that first weekend. And a lot of things happened during that first weekend that I didn't know were going to happen. Like, when we remove the barrier of money, the way that we participate with clothing is very different than even if we have to think about a $5 or a $10 purchase. And so that was really fascinating to me. My background is in psychology and coaching, and so I'm very interested in what drives our behavior and kind of that. So that was really fascinating. But the bigger thing was that I had started this Facebook group to just let the women who were going to know, or who were coming, to let them know like how it was going to work and what we were going to do. And people just kept adding more people to that group, and then saying it was so cold, we didn't come. When are you going to do the next one? And I was like, well, I wasn't really planning on doing the next one. And so from that seed was planted, and several months later, we incorporated as a public benefit corporation. I ended up getting on a reality TV show for startup businesses, and now we've went through the franchise process, and we're actually expanding in other locations. And so it's been a crazy journey in just a very short period of time, but so rewarding for me, right? Like, things that I didn't know that I would do or that I would find that light me up are absolutely such a part of my day-to-day now, and I love it so much.
That's really exciting. Tell us a bit more, because this is quite a transition. This clothing swap is usually like a one-off event that you do with your friends. So tell us about transitioning it to a scalable business model.
Yeah, so when I thought about, I did a lot of research on how traditional clothing swaps work and in my own experience as a plus size person, I wasn't invited to a lot of those places because I can't be successful if none of the items fit, right? So inclusivity has always been a big part of just my heart. But this was like an even
Mm.
bigger reason to make it more inclusive. And so, and the other things that I think that I had to really pay attention to and look at is some of the things that happen with clothing swaps are, we're not examining every single piece, especially maybe not in front of one of our best girlfriends, right? We don't want her to think that we don't think the piece is really great. We look at it, we think it's cute, we might try it on, and then, great, we took a few pieces home, and then it's no different really than an experience that we might have outside of that we didn't pay for that piece, but outside of that we might have going to a traditional store and shopping or ordering something after you've worn it all day or after you've worn it for a couple of hours. Does it still feel the same? Or is there a
Yeah.
rip, a stain, a tear that maybe she didn't even really know about? Or was there?
Yeah.
And so there are all these, kinds of things that traditional clothing swaps, in addition to the inclusivity piece, don't really support or allow for. And so the thing that I looked at is how could we create a space where someone could really have no guilt and no risk and just try it once and then
Yeah.
swap it back. And so the idea became we created our own point system. So kind of have our own little economy inside of our community. And the women, there's no money exchanged outside of they pay a monthly membership and then, or an annual membership, and then we're a true circular economy. They can just trade out as often and as much as they want. So if they take the piece and they find that it rides up or it slips off the shoulder or it just doesn't fit quite right, often sometimes that happens, they can just swap it back. But on the flip side, if they find something that they love, they can keep it forever. And so it really allows somebody to curate their experience for their own
Mm.
behaviors, styles, that kind of thing. And so in our flagship location, we went from when we opened our store in June of 2023, we had about 37 members, and we went from about 37 members to about 687 in about 6 months. It just went really, really fast. Then we spent the next couple of years really like looking at the operations. How do we manage this? We're taking in
Yeah.
about 10,000 items a month. What does that look like? What is the team that needs to support this? That kind of thing. And just really documenting and systematizing all of the processes that we were going through. And we've had to change a lot of
Mm.
those throughout, the last couple of years. So it's been a really interesting process to kind of look at what does it look like if we're doing this for 300 people versus 10,000 people versus 10,000 people, that kind of thing.
I think this is something that people don't often think about when it comes to the fashion industry, but it's a business at the end of the day. So, like any business, the structure backbone behind it has a huge impact, whether it's for its success or how it's growing. It's inevitable in any business in the fashion
Yeah,
industry or outside.
absolutely.
And if we think about the experience, tell us how Switch Society managed to make a clothing swap feels more exciting and an experience rather than a compromise that it can often be perceived as.
Yeah, so the thing that's so exciting about Switch that I personally experience, but that I hear from our members all the time is we call it discovery phase, right? Like they get to every time they come in, it's like they get to discover something new. And there's this like identity play that happens that doesn't happen in a lot of other places because budget is such a huge factor for so many people, right? So if you
Yes.
if you grew up thinking that you shouldn't wear this or you should wear that because that's what, the people that you were around told you, and yet that doesn't really fit where you're at now, or let's say you've changed
Yeah.
jobs or you became a parent or your kids, grew up and now you got divorced. I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
things that happen in our life that warrant, kind of reinventing ourselves in some way, or we've had a body change, our body has changed
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form. The ability to just try something new without any kind of guilt or risk, rather than waiting waiting for the event that, like a lot of clothing swaps are on we do this quarterly or we do this, once a
Yeah.
month or we do this whatever, that's all great and fine. But all of a sudden, if you have a date to get ready for, or you have an event that you got
Mm.
invited to go to and you want something now, you're then going to go shopping or, you're maybe
Yeah.
going to thrift or you're going to make a purchase of some sort. And with our model, you can literally just pop into our physical location and try something new. And there's no guilt, there's no risk. And it's so easy and it's so fun. And so I think that's the part that they continue to have that experience over and over and over again. And it
Hmm.
allows them to sort of open up their comfort zone too, right? What they once
Yeah.
thought, oh, I could never pull that off or I could never wear that. Now all of a sudden she's leaning towards that particular color that she never picked for the whole majority of her life. And it gives her so much
Yeah.
joy. So I think that
Yeah.
part for me is the part that it's so fun.
Freeing.
Yeah, it's
It's
freedom.
fun and freeing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And freedom is rarely is associated to retail fashion or
Right.
everyday fashion. It's not something that we would connect naturally in our mind. But then that's where we should have it the most every day in our
Yes.
life. That's where we want to like it makes such a difference to feel freer and to just fashion should be a game first before any kind of restriction or rule. Like it should be fun. It should elevate your energy and your mood for the day, not feel constrictive or stressful.
Yeah.
So I can really tell that the community is still very much at the core. You're getting customer feedback. What are some of the feedback or perspective that has surprised you the most that you've got from the members of the community?
I think that some of the things that surprised me most was I didn't know that it was going to happen like this, right? Like a lot of things have kind of just unfolded in front of me. I had no idea that we were going to be in a really fun way confronting or helping women to settle their nervous system around how they get dressed every
Yeah,
single morning
yeah.
instead of exactly what you just said, instead of it being stressful and frustrating and now I have a closet full of clothing and nothing to wear. How many of us have had that
Mm,
experience over and over again,
yeah.
right? Now that's not even a factor. And so that part, it makes sense, but I had no idea that that was going to be, the experience and what we've created. And I think the other thing that's so fun is a lot of women are community oriented and we love to go do things together. And so women will go shopping together. And I didn't know they were going to bring their entire office with them, right? I didn't know they were going to bring their entire school. We have a group of teachers and they're all from like different schools and they come together and they meet every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. at the store so they can commune together and just like have this fun experience. And their husbands and significant others are like thrilled because they're not spending any money. So the feedback from the significant other was like, oh yeah, we're high on their list because they get to just continue to circulate. So it's feeding this part of us that really wants to have that freedom of expression and that fun without the budgetary and it's conscious consumerism at it in one of
Yeah.
its greatest forms, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think once we're touching also about the nervous system, and we said like if it's stressful or there's a pressure, I think something else that actually happens also is that there's very often a guilt associated to purchasing new clothes, whether it's because we don't want to impact the environment or it's because we don't feel that it should be like we feel this money should be saved or allocated to something that is more adult or more responsible, but at the same time, this joy that it brings us, like retail therapy is not a word that came out of nothing. Like this joy for women to express their creativity and their identity to their clothing is something that somehow is priceless. And we like the fact that you can free this from the guilt that comes often with spending money for that. I think this is a beautiful mission.
Yeah, one of our phrases, no guilt, no risk, right? Like that's the big big piece, and you're absolutely right. It is such a internal conflict, right? That when I wear this thing, or if I purchase this piece, or I go and try it on and it feels so good, even if it's
Yeah.
25 or 35 or $55, like, oh,
Yeah.
should I be putting that towards this or
I
right? But
know.
yet at the
Yeah.
same time, how I feel makes it, like it's a real conversation for so many women for sure.
Where would you think that traditional retail can learn from clothing swap communities?
I think that for me, it's really community building, right? I call it curating the community. When I think about retail, it's a very transactional relationship, and there's not a lot of, I don't develop, they don't know me really, right? And unless I'm going back to the same place on a consistent enough basis, and I think there are some of those experiences, but I think that what I'm seeing and what's so fun about what a clothing swap offers is the ability for women to connect with each other and to support each other
Yeah.
on the journey, because so many of us often feel as we're standing in front of our closet and we are frustrated or feeling guilt or shame about this piece that I bought and now I've only worn one time, or I never wore it at all. So many other women feel that exact same way. And so there's got to be a better way, right? When we're all just sitting
Correct.
in the yuck of all of that, there's a better way. And so I think that when and if they can look at how can we build community around some of the same things that women go through, rather than perpetuating it, right? Like rather than
Yeah.
shifting the conversation to how can we make more of this? How can we create more of that?
Yeah.
How can we,
Yeah.
give light to the challenges that these things create or have created, and how can we bring them together so that they know they're not on the island all by themselves? I mean, logically we know that, but also we're standing there by ourselves almost every single morning, right? Going through that alone.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of it is connection and really
Yeah.
figuring out, how can we bring women together? How can we, and not just women, but people. I speak about women specifically because that's who we serve in our community. But I think just people as a whole right now, we really,
Yeah.
it's a great time for us to think about how we can connect to one another. And I think that the retail conversation could learn a lot from that. And that's a bigger conversation, of course, to have, because the transactional kind of feeling that comes from being in retail.
Yeah, I think this desire for connection was always there, and as we grow as a society, it's just going to keep on getting stronger and stronger. This is never going to get away, and it's still going to be this priceless, precious thing that we all have at heart, regardless of how conscious we are of it or not, you know? So
Absolutely.
now, if we go back to your business,
Yes.
looking at your business today, what has most of your focus right now?
The scaling aspect. I met with a group of investors last week, and one of them, said to me, "You need to have 10 locations like right now." And I'm like, I know. So we're having lots of conversations, and I think when you're doing something as unique and as new, like we're creating a whole new category here. And so there is some education that has to come with that. It's not just like, oh, yeah, you're buying a McDonald's that's been tested and tried and true, or even, something like a Plato's Closet, or, things that people
Yeah,
really understand and that feel the brain wants to go towards the thing that I know or I can most associate this to. And this has so
yeah,
many cross sections or intersects in so many different ways
yeah,
that it takes a minute for people to really understand, like, that's a cool
yeah.
idea. How does that work? And what would that look like for me? So we're having a lot of really, really good conversations with a lot of prospective franchisees all across the US. And right
Okay.
now, I live in Montana normally, and right now I'm in Arizona because I'm looking at another founder-led store, and we bootstrapped the whole thing. So right, capital is a real hard part of this equation, right? It would, if I had all the money in the world, I would have went and opened a bunch of stores already, but we don't, that's not
Yeah.
real, right? We built it all through the community. And so yeah, my focus right now is really looking at expanding our footprint so that we can show people not only the experience that they can have as an operator and as a member, but also as a part of this bigger ecosystem that we're building.
Yeah, I can see the vision. If I were to give you a magic wand and you could automate one aspect, which one would it be?
That is a great question. Oh my gosh. I think if I could automate any one thing, it would be inventory, because that is one of the places that it's very time consuming part of the process.
Yeah.
And for my tiny little team at our flagship location, we spend a considerable amount of time on that. And I do think, with some of the things that are happening with AI and the conversations that are being
Yeah.
had and the things that are being developed, we're using a lot of tools. I think it's going to continue to expand and I think it's going to grow. And I think there's going to be some support there at some point. But that's probably one of the biggest pieces for us because we do curate what goes out on the floor, people to shop. And then, the remainder of the things go into our surplus side. And there's things that we do with that. So there's a lot of sorting and processing that happens when we do inventory from the members when that what they bring in.
So now, if we look towards the future, I know we spoke about expansion, scaling, but is there anything else that you want to share with us for the vision to the future? If we look at the next 2 to 3 years, let's say.
Yeah, I think that having people know that this is an option for them, right? Which is part of the
Mm,
expansion conversation, but really understanding that this model, this type of model, I think we're going to see these things pop up more and more and more in other places
yeah,
because it just makes sense. And
yeah.
people will often ask me, "Well, aren't you concerned that somebody's going to copy your idea?" And I'm like, "No, I hope they do. They won't be able to replicate it exactly the way that I have done it because we have
Yeah,
a very specific set of things that we do, and that's our moat. That's our IP. That's how we protect our community and what we've done. We need better systems in the fashion
yeah,
industry and in right. And circularity is such a huge part of this conversation. And so
absolutely.
it's better for everyone if we have more of these
Yeah,
types of businesses, right? And not just in the fashion industry, but in business as a
yeah,
whole, right? There's a lot of industry
yeah,
that could really benefit from having circular systems in place. And so I really
absolutely.
want to be a proponent of how can we encourage and increase those opportunities within existing industries more.
I really, really agree with your perspective. In the fashion industry, especially, it's really often seemed like the law of the jungle, and there's this archaic idea about competition. But there's not just one way to do competition. There's like right now, and if you go back some decades ago, it's a competition, but like in the sense of a gladiator ring. Everyone is there to kill. But how about competition like the Olympics? All
Right,
of us against the limits, all of
right.
us elevating our art or our sport, our business, our industry, our mindset. All of us, okay, you did it like this. Oh, let me take from there, step up, and then go back. And then let's collaborate and let's talk. And thank you for sharing this with me. Here is what I tested. And then you take it from there. And then you go higher and higher and higher. It's really time for the fashion industry to wake up and break from this archaic idea of the competition. There's not just one way to competition can be healthy and fun. And at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
if you really embrace your identity, nobody is going to need to be able to do the business the way Emily do it. If you're trying to be a second Emily, that's where things get like impoverished
Yeah.
and diminished. But if you see I love what Emily is doing. I also want to do this. Well,
Yeah.
do it like you would do it. And
Yeah.
then just beautiful things are born this way.
Absolutely. Competition breeds growth, right?
Yes.
It makes us the best of who we are and who we can be, and we can learn things from each other. When we're not pushed in that way, we sometimes get complacent and then we don't think of new
Yeah.
innovative ways of doing
Yeah.
things because we don't have to, right? So I
Yeah.
love the idea of having and creating more of these kinds of systems so that it's just better for everyone, right? It's better for the
It
consumer.
is.
It's better for the business
Correct.
owner and it's better for the planet, right? I always call it a triple threat, right? We have to have more of this going on. So, yeah.
A triple treat. Let's
Yeah,
call it this
right.
way.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, Emily, thank you so much for joining me today. For the listener who want to stay in touch, all the handles and the link will be in the bio. Emily, it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me and thank you for what you're doing to further this conversation. I'm so glad to be a part of it.
If this conversation resonated with you, please let me know by commenting, leaving a review or a rating. And if someone from your network or your close circle will benefit from this conversation, do share the word with them, and I'll see you next time.